Welcome to Self. I'm Courtney Brame, your host. And what Self is, in short, just like self help for myself. If there was someone out there who I was having shared similar experiences as, this would be kind of like a roadmap for me to assess parallels from them, and then I'll allow that to guide a little bit of how I would navigate similar situations moving forward. So today's episode is titled "Keep the Change," and that's kind of a little bit of an double entendre between keep the change, like here I'm paying for this experience, you can have the remaining money, as well as you different and this ain't working for me anymore, so you can have that developmental change. All right. um, so I've experienced throughout my life a lot of people who have come and gone, a lot of relationships that have started and ended probably just as fast as they've started. Um, and some have felt more intense than others. Some have been more solid bonds. Some have been less solid bonds. Some have been very surprising. Some I've seen coming. And one of the things that I'm learning throughout just becoming an adult is that not everybody is going to prioritize you in the way that they might have always prioritized you. Um, there are people who, when they get around certain friends, their personalities may change. Hell, I would even go as far as to say that's a very similar thing for myself, just because certain people bring certain things out of you. And as I continue to become older and wiser, what I'm learning is, especially as a man, it's very important for me to consistently be who I am. And the people who I feel that I can be completely myself with without having to dumb anything down, these are the people who I get to be that consistent person with without having to dim anything about myself, without having to modify my behavior. And the more that I do that, I'm noticing that more people are emerging in my life who also do that. The safer it feels to allow for yourself to speak from the soul, from your pure essence, from your character, from yourself, then the more safe other people may feel in order to do that as well. And that should always be the case. And anyone with anything less than that, like if your authentic expression of self is triggering to that person or challenges them to be more of that, and they don't want to do that, then there's going to be a little bit of a clash. And another thing that I've learned is that if the true expression from one person and another person just don't match up or align, you'll know. And once that happens, I think that that's when you begin to notice how you feel around this person. Like if it brings unease to your expression because someone else's expression is like um, is brighter or more vibrant or more intense, then I think that's information. That's information to look at, because I'll often ask myself, am I triggered or am I being challenged? Is it one of those two things? And oftentimes it is me being challenged. I used to be very afraid to be around people who are who they are because it challenged me to be who I am. And it always felt like it wasn't really safe for me to do that. Between having herpes, between being a black man in most white spaces, or being a man in predominantly woman spaces, or being straight in queer spaces, even. Um, all of these environments have made me challenge something within myself. And I'm very fortunate to have had these experiences because I think that it taught me a lot about myself. I think that it's taught me that I am who I am, not exclusively in relation to that which is the opposite of me. For example, like my masculinity, looking at it from a lens of femininity, my manliness, looking at it from the lens of women, or my straightness from the lens of gayness, or my blackness to whiteness. I'm not layering myself in comparison to what it means to be on the other end of a spectrum that my existence might be on. And since living my life this way, it's been phenomenal. But I had to go through those experiences in order to get to this one. And for where I am, I think that I've not necessarily transcended the idea of race, sexual orientation, or gender, or any of that. But it's become less of a priority to me. What is a priority now is how I'm being treated by the people that I decide to show my real self to. And I make it a point now to always be myself because for so long I haven't been. I've had to hide what I do in my day to day life from partners' families, from partners' friends, from myself, even. And looking back, that hurts. I very much mourn, or mourn, I very much feel for that version of myself that couldn't fully express, and I'm not doing that anymore. Um, and I think that part of the reason that I'm able to so confidently not do that anymore is because I'm noticing that the people and the environments that it's not possible for me to do that in, or that I feel uncomfortable doing that in, they kind of phase out like as I've committed to being who I am 100% of the time, and to do so unapologetically. So I've had a recent experience where I can honestly say that I lost a friend. And when we lose friends, I think what happens is there's this grieving process. There's this grieving process that has to occur from the time you spent together, who you are or were in that person's presence, and who you saw yourself being later down the road with that person in your life. So it's not just grieving the relationship, it's grieving your identity and who you were, who you are, as well as who you thought you would become in relation to having this person in your life. And, I think that it's very important that we know um, who's for us in our life. And sometimes it's not something that's easy to just point out. It's not always something that other people would be able to point out. And so if it just like costs you a little bit of something, whether it be a little bit of time, a little bit of energy, a little bit of money, a little bit of discomfort, to know that someone doesn't belong in your life is probably going to save you whatever that investment of energy, time, or money might have been. And in my case, I think that it was two things: it was time and it was also money. And having looked at it, it's like it was worth the money to know, oh, this is who this person really is, or this is how this person truly is, because it's not the same. And people can change, there's nothing wrong with changing, but to see someone more anchored in their identity in a way that you don't get to see, it kind of tells me that there's a little bit of conflict or duality between a person and who they are versus who they want you to think they are. And just like in relationships, I'll ask myself, if there's someone that I'm dating, what do I want? And then what do I want from you or with you? And not all the time do those answers align with one another. And when they do align, that tends to lead toward a relationship. When they don't align, there's no longevity there. And so we got to do that same thing even in our friendships, even with the people around us. Ask, what do I want from a friendship? And then allow yourself to go, well, what do I want with this friendship? And present it to the person, even. Or if you're already getting that thing, then maybe you don't have to, because then that could just make it weird if you are like, hey, what are we getting out of this friendship? But you already know the answer to that. But that can be something that's helpful, especially for a check in with somebody, because it allows for the opportunity to reconnect the friendship. But in my case, I've lost another friend as well, just through some he said, she said stuff, and I never even got the chance to say my piece about any of what was happening. And I think I spoke about this on a previous episode. Uh, but sometimes we gotta accept the fact that uh, it's not closure that we need, but clarity. And I think that sometimes, someone's response or lack of response is all the closure that we need, because it brings us clarity so that we can decide how to move forward. And you don't always need the other person that was involved in order to decide how you want to move forward. Like, you don't have to make contact with that person or those people. Um, and you can really judge people based off of how they handle situations, how they interact with other people in comparison to you. And I can speak on this because this happened so long ago, but I was dating someone, and I remember I disappeared for a minute, and when I came back, she was talking to this like really tall, skinny dude who had long dreads, and he had more of like a little thug vibe to him. And when I saw that, I was like, oh, I gotta say something. I couldn't just not say anything. So I remember telling him, I was like, hey man, it's my girl. He's like, what's her name? It's like, I said her name. He was like, oh, all right then, and walked off. But what couldn't get out of my head was how she lit up when they were talking. And on an intuitive level, I knew. I was like, oh, this is what you like. That ain't me. So I had to essentially ask the question for her. What do you like? What do you want? Versus what do you like about me, and what do you want from me? And I had to ask, I had to answer that for myself, because I already got it. Like, you can see it in a person's behavior more than you can see it with their words. Regardless if somebody's like, oh, but I want you, but I want to be with you. Behaviors, actions speak so much louder than words. And in hindsight, like, I'm very glad that I was able to let her go. I'm not happy about how I did it. I had to like make up something in the relationship just because I didn't have those same communication skills that I developed. But that was an intuitive thing for me. It was intuitive for me to pick up on that and then be able to go, oh, I'm not what you want. I'm not what you really want. I'm just available and accessible to you. And I never want to be easy to somebody. Like, I think that it's important for us to be with who we believe is the best option to us in that present moment, and vice versa. Like, allow for it to line up. And it's not just in relationships, but also friendships. Because sometimes the person that we think is our best friend, or the person that we want to be our best friend, we're not theirs. And, not to say that that can't be a thing, but also you got to ask, what do you want versus what do you want with me? And I think I got to experience that. I got to experience that a couple of times. And, I guess this might be part of my grieving process, but I didn't think that, a friendship would just like end, especially over like something as petty as some time or some money, you know? So, just with situations like that, moving forward, I think perhaps setting more clear boundaries and expectations will be something that I do. But also, if my intuition is telling me something, I gotta follow it. Because I mean, maybe the argument would have been a little bit different, or the disagreements would have been a little bit different had I listened to my intuition. Because ultimately, what ended up happening was I went somewhere I had no business being at, and it showed. And trying to compensate for my presence in that space, all that ended up doing was backfiring on me. And it ended up just costing me some money. And it wasn't a super significant amount of money by any means, but just the way that the situation was handled, I gotta say, man, I didn't expect that from, someone that I called friend. And again, this wasn't about me it wasn't about me putting myself, in the position of losing this friend, but I think that it was about me going against my intuition. My better judgment was like, hey, this probably ain't a good idea. But I went through with it and endured it, and at the end of it, it was just a waste of my fucking time. Like, I look back and I'm like, why did I do this? And not only that, but it was also a waste of money. And I think that it's very important that we be present with our intuition. We need to be present with our intuition. We need to be present with ourselves in whatever moment it is that we're in. And if intuition is speaking through us and it's saying, hey, this is probably more in alignment, then we gotta answer that. We gotta, at the very least, be curious about it and explore that. Because for me, it came up and I enacted it, and I got a little bit of a second guessing of it, because when I presented it to the person, they were just like, why are you doing this? What's the point? Why are you trying to get out of doing this thing that I want to do for you? And, ultimately, it wasn't about me. That thing wasn't for me. It wasn't about me. I believe that this was more for the person, and that kind of taught me too. We don't always do things for other people. We do things for other people that might, at the very least, make us feel good. So we're doing it for other people through our action through or to other people is a way that we do something for ourselves. So looking back, I really, really should have listened to my own intuition and going against that intuition or even just following through with it. That might have still ended the relationship, but I think that, it would have costed me less time and money. I would have been able to get straight to the point of what the real issue was. But overall, I think that it could have been a better experience for everybody had I just not gone and gotten involved because ultimately like I said, I shouldn't have been there. I shouldn't have been where I was. And yeah, going through with it, lost me a friend. I have no desire to be friends anymore. And just the absence of communication, especially in regards to just like money. If this little bit of money is enough to have caused a ripple in what I thought was a solid friendship, then it wasn't ever really a friendship to begin with. And it's a very similar situation to another one that I've spoken about on the podcast before, where my genuine concern for one of my friends' mental health um, had been twisted and flipped into being an issue. Um, Wow. Okay, so the video just rebooted. I don't know what happened there, but yeah, I guess we're just doing audio now. That was unexpected. Um, but yeah, and intuitively, even that was a situation that I very easily could have avoided just by accepting the reality of what it was. Sometimes we don't need to be forcing ourselves into people's lives. There's a component of our existence, where we can in fact co-environment. I don't know what the word is. Like we can coexist in environments or like go into other environments and like fit in and be there and be present and have a good time. Uh, but when intuition is speaking to you, you really gotta listen, Courtney. And this I hope resonates with anybody else who might come across this podcast episode whenever it does happen. But the way I see it, I was if initially really angry and I wanted my money, and now what's become more important to me is that I just not repeat this mistake. Sometimes we see, another person may need you more than you need them. And even in that, like sometimes being needed is more important than, needing the person. And so that's kind of that's where I'm at on this. Like I'm gonna be leaving where I'm at pretty soon, and for the way things happened between myself and this person to have happened this way, I think that it is what it is you know. So I'll say this, you can keep the change. Whatever that investment was, it's small change in the grand scheme of things. I'm not gonna get my money back. I might, because I could get my money back. Who knows? But I have no desire to reach out and chase it down or anything like that. So my whole thing is you can keep the change, you can keep the money, and you can also keep the change as far as like who you've become, because it's not consistent with what I've seen, from this person. Um, and there's another situation. I was dating someone. Well, we were just having sex, and this relationship. Uh, I guess like there was also a point where I just kind of like there's been a shift recently for me where just having sex for me isn't enough. I need intimacy. I need emotional connection. I need longevity. I need to know that there's the potential for progression there. And I was talking to the woman, and she made a comment. She made a comment to me, calling her kid a kid, and she's a little bit older than I am, like 10 years older than I am. We were just hooking up. It was good times. We were having a good time. And she's confided in me, about some of the struggles that she has with her offspring, and like where this person is emotionally. And she called this person a kid to me, and it was like in a casual way. So I just called it. I was like, "Hey, stop calling them a kid." And then from there, she kind of like lost her shit on me because it felt like I was telling her how to parent or something. And so I just was like, "Hey, you know what? Yeah, you right. We done here." So we just progressed into to some dialogue, and I was just like, "Yo, that's a little bit of invalidating to a person's identity. Like, I don't call the youth that I educate kids because it's invalidating to their identity. I mean, granted, I'm not taking care of any of these youth, right? And in that sense, it's like the way that you might be talking to me about this person might be the same way that you talk to them, and it just like invalidates their identity as an adult who is capable of taking care of themselves. And so like I went into this conversation, and she further was just like, well, you don't have kids, so you can't tell me how to talk to mine. I was like, all right, just made an observation, just like, well, we just fucking stay in your place. And lately, I'm really having a problem with people telling me to stay in my place and stay in my lane, because it's very much feeling like the only thing I'm supposed to do is be black, be straight, be a man, be of use to whoever that person is in that moment, and that's it. Like, that's what my job is. So this is another instance where it's like, you know what, you can keep the change. The little bit that I've invested, I gave you some dick, bought you some food, and I think that was it. That was probably all that I had at that point invested. So it's like, yeah, you can keep that change too. Um, but when we lose people, or I use air quotes when I say lose people, I think that it's very important that we just look at it from the perspective of, you can keep the change. Like, I got something out of the interaction. It may be more, it may be less, than what the other person might have gotten. But at the end of it all, the knowing that this is who a person really is and that y'all don't align is worth whatever few dollars, a little bit of time was spent to get to that point, the little bit of an argument or disagreement or whatever. But yeah, I didn't like just being objectified and limited exclusively to someone who, we was just having sex. And when she pointed that out, I was like, you know what, you're right. I don't want this anymore. I want more than that. So, and this is a bit ago, so I feel good talking about it now after having processed it already. But yeah, I had to declutter my space, and I think that the absence of these two friendships that I spoke about, and the absence of this sexual relationship that I was having with someone, has really decluttered my space in order for me to accept and let in like some very genuine connections recently, and I'm very excited about one in particular. And yeah, looking forward to seeing where that goes. So yeah, the energy shifts are very much real, and I really think that it's because I'm able to let go and let go of wanting to really cling and hold on to things that probably for a while now have been causing me harm, but I've just not been able to notice because I was in it. And again, it just goes back to keep the change. Keep the change. You can keep that change. Money wise, you can keep that change, your own personal development wise, because it's not for me. We ain't doing for each other. Um, so yeah, I'm very much, that's my attitude now. If somebody doesn't want to be cool anymore, uh, that's what they can do. They can keep the change. It's not a loss. And it goes for relationships too. I mentioned I'm very excited about this connection that I have. I'm very excited about the energy that's being welcomed into my life, but I'm also willing to let it go if it isn't going to serve long term and be mutually beneficial, because that's what I'm looking for at this point in my life. I'm looking for that longevity, that long term. Um, yeah, I'm looking for that long term and longevity. And yeah, if these connections ain't being fruitful to that, I can let them go. And also, man, like, what kind of bums me out too is that like I've always had a very diverse group of friends, and I feel like most recently I lost quite a bit of that diversity. Just speaking with these three situations alone. Um, but I don't know. I think that this kind of is another topic for me to speak to on another day. But like how forced diversity feels when it's not. I saw, I follow Stephanie Zapata on social media, and she posted something that was really powerful to me. It said, it's a difference between, everyone is welcome here versus this space was created with you specifically in mind. And this was a repost, so I don't know who exactly said it, but shout out to Stephanie because she be posting some shit, and I love it. Like the stuff, the way that it be hidden, especially the timing of it for me, like it be on point. I don't get everything, but I get what I get, and it resonates when it does. And that's important to me. It's important to me that the people around me are who they are, and I feel like she's one of those people who is who she is. Even if it's mostly a social media connection or peer, so to speak, in the sex education space. Um, but yeah, that's what's important, man. And sometimes various identities and diversity and stuff. Like maybe we just don't belong in the same room. Being the only straight dude in a room full of queer or LGBT women identifying people that might not feel safe to them, and my not feeling safe may just translate differently. They may not feel physically safe, but I may not feel emotionally safe, right? Or being the only black dude in a room full of white people. I might not feel as physically safe as other people may not feel emotionally safe. So yeah, it just kind of trickles down. The list goes on, but yeah, I'm really learning so many valuable lessons here, and I think that what self has been serving as for me is just like a place for me to say certain things out loud. I have my friend groups where I process things, and I do that with my friends. Um, but there's something about this just seems a little bit more powerful. Maybe somebody hears it and it resonates with them. But I know ain't too many people listening to this podcast. I think I might talk to you know consistently one of the people who listen to it, and I'm very appreciative of you for listening and having whatever feedback you give me, because it's like engaging in a conversation where on the other side a person just has to listen, and then they come back to you after you've completed your thought, and then they're like, wow, you said this thing that stuck to me, and then we can make it into a conversation. So that's what this podcast is. Like it doesn't really have a purpose. It's something to keep me consistent with being able to check in with myself and being able to be in the practice of podcasting as well. So if you are here listening, I thank you for being here and listening. I appreciate you. And yeah, until next time, talk to you soon.